How are you, man?
I'm good, my man.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
I liked what you did on SABC. That was really nice.
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation.
Yep.
And I love the points that you brought in, especially on the gold value chain and the intention of Al Jazeera in making this documentary. What do you think was the motive, the real motive of having this documentary?
Wow. You know, the thing is like this. Zimbabwe has become this problematic country. A country that when they imposed sanctions on us, they expected it to collapse within 3 years.
Yeah.
That's what had been planned in Washington and in London. And they thought that they'll take away fuel, they'll take away lending, they'll take away investment, white farmers would leave, take their machinery, and everything will collapse.
But the country hasn't. It's now 23 years of sanctions and nothing has collapsed.
Worse still, ever since the new president came in, Idi Mnangagwa, is that there is actually improvement in the country.
In terms of infrastructure, production of agriculture,
Exactly.
Then mining.
I mean, when you see a country like Zimbabwe, which they said the miners, they chased away farmers, farming has collapsed, but we've got a bumper harvest in wheat.
And who is producing this?
And it's black farmers and the white farmers that remained who want to see Zimbabwe working.
They are producing.
And what has happened is that we've seen the business community, the president coming in with his president's input scheme.
Supporting the farmers.
And then what a lot of people don't understand is that the diaspora of Zimbabwe, which has become our biggest export, I actually contest that gold is our biggest export. I actually think that human capital and human talent.
So we invested this into this talent, into this human.
The Zimbabwean government invested into the creating this.
So they're now reaping from that investment.
And you know what I find funny is that when I saw you on SABC, I saw that, you know, that intellectual thing that is created by the education
system.
And this education system of Zimbabwe is not driven by private schools. It is some of the poorest schools that produce the highest quality
by the government.
That's what I love about it.
Now, with all this going on, why now are we having this documentary at this stage?
You know, the interesting thing is this. I'll give it from a reference point of what's happening with us. So we started a case with the United States in February last year.
This anti-sanctions
case,
yes,
where we said we're going to sue in South African courts and we're going to target the banks in the biggest trading partner of Zimbabwe, South Africa, which has got banks that are actually sanctioning Zimbabweans.
And that these banks are not American banks.
No, it's banks that are domiciled in South Africa that include the American banks and local banks.
They're implementing these sanctions.
They close accounts. They break corresponding banking relationships. They say that they're not going to give Zimbabwe US dollars anymore. They say that they're not going to give loans. And sometimes when payments come, they actually can block those payments.
And when they are doing this, do they have evidence or justification to do it? Or
no,
it's just arbitrary?
Arbitrary, just because the Americans said it.
Don't you think this documentary, by putting this kind of narrative that they put, won't it be used as the argument that when we're closing these accounts, we're actually trying to stop money laundering?
Very good. And that's exactly what it is that the banks were saying. They were saying, we don't have sanctions on you guys. We, number one, we de-risk because the Americans say they've got sanctions and they'll penalize us if we open accounts for Zimbabweans, number one. Number two, a lot of times we're not implementing sanctions, we're de-risking for money laundering and funding of terrorism. So we asked them, how do you de-risk without trying people? How do you de-risk without taking a person into court, allowing them to answer to allegations and then determining whether they're guilty or innocent before you start depriving them of their rights? So they're saying it's at our discretion. And we're saying, but the discretion that is discriminatory is illegal because discrimination is against the South African Constitution. Then we brought in the Americans as well. We said, right, the American president is the one putting pressure together with his Secretary of State on institutions in South Africa to implement under the threat of secondary sanctions, punishment, or even criminal prosecution.
These sanctions, the secondary sanctions you're talking about, and the gold sector, there's a link. I think I tried to during the SABC interview, I pointed that out, that in 2019, South African banks that were supplying cash to Fidelity, to the RBZ,
Yes, stopped.
because of the secondary sanctions.
100%.
So the gold sector is providing Zimbabwe with that cash.
And
that
you
they
brought
cannot
in
get.
something I didn't know. You said that the US dollars are now coming from Dubai because the South African banks closed.
Close that tap.
100%. And that what we're saying is that the South African banks are only closing because they're being forced by the Secretary of State
Yes.
and the executive orders of Biden. So Biden and the Secretary of State must come to South African courts and answer. So just a day before they released
The
this,
document, yes.
they responded to our papers. After 13 months of silence, 13 months of not responding to the papers, the court case is at a standstill because everybody is waiting for the
for them
Americans to
So
respond.
now that they've responded and now that the documentary has come out, don't you think the banks will now have something to stand on?
What it is that they're trying to do now
Mhm.
is they're trying to empower the banks to have something to stand on.
To stand on
To
with
say,
this
you see,
documentary.
this is money laundering. This is why we are actually targeting Zimbabweans and these people that we're targeting because they're money laundering. This is why we've got Kudata Gurei, because they mentioned Kudata Gurei in the papers,
In the American paper, in the banks.
in their response to the
Okay.
court case.
That's interesting.
They mentioned Kudata Gurei, they mentioned Radland. They mentioned,
But they were never convicted of this crime.
they were never convicted of those crimes.
But they are part of the case.
And they've got their names in the case. You see what I'm saying? And so now they have used this documentary to ventilate their argument in the public domain to influence the judges and to influence the court case.
Okay, now on that part, do you think the documentary is going to have real impact in terms of the flow of US dollar cash to Zimbabwe?
No.
In the immediate or short term, in the short term?
Right now, the Al Jazeera guys, as you rightly did, you embarrassed him. The producer could not answer the questions you were asking and the questions I was asking.
Yes.
They could not show the relationship between the Reserve Bank, the gold that they were taking as agents, and agents operating in their own capacity because they've already bought the gold, they've paid for the gold.
The Al Jazeera guys did not understand the gold.
The gold chain.
The gold value chain. All of it.
Yes.
Okay. So where does it? It starts with the miner.
Yes.
Who is an ordinary person like me and you
100%.
can become miners.
100%.
We produce our gold. Where do we take it?
Immediately when you're a miner, there's a video that I've got on Twitter.
Yes, I saw your video.
Yes.
So
that woman explains on her own that to say, once I've produced my gold and I've produced this smelted gold, I've got two options.
The smelted gold is not commercially, is not 99% pure.
It's not 99% pure.
She has two options.
She's two options.
Yes.
I take it to Fidelity.
To purify it further, to refine it further.
To sell it to Fidelity.
Just as it is.
Just as it is.
Okay.
Right? Fidelity has got a sheet that they have that has got the prices every single day. They issue that sheet of gold prices and the prices they're willing to offer. When it's an artisanal miner, they give 100% US dollar payment.
Immediately.
In
cash. Okay.
Right? And then you've got the option of going to the buyers or the agents. There are two types of buyers. There's the dealer. The dealer is the one who pays $200,000 for the license. License.
Yes.
A license that allows them to buy, to smelt, and to export. And the smelting here, I'm just not sure, is it smelting with a smelter or actually taking it to Fidelity?
They have to refine.
They have to refine
yes,
that gold.
You have to,
and you have to get a certificate.
Yes.
That talks about the level of refinement and the quality. And then you get your export permit to take it out of the country.
So you cannot avoid the refinery.
You can't avoid the refinery because you won't get the paperwork. And you can't go to Dubai with a gold that does not have certification as to the quality of the product. And the quality of the product can only be certified by a refinery.
like Fidelity.
Yeah.
So how do I smuggle? How does someone smuggle it after going to the refinery? How
does it make sense? Because the buyer, in the event that the person hasn't gone to Fidelity with their gold, comes, pays the miner. And he pays the miner close to what? Sometimes in some cases it's almost over 90%. of the gold of the global market price of
Market
gold.
price of gold.
So he pays for it, leaves that money there. Then he goes to Fidelity. He goes and smelts. He pays
For the service
for the service.
of smelt.
So all along, he's just dishing out money.
Is investing.
He's investing.
He hasn't harvested
I
anything.
like that. I like that. That's,
He hasn't
that's
harvested-
powerful.
He hasn't harvested anything.
Yeah. Then he goes to then immediately when he's finished at Fidelity, Fidelity won't give him his gold until Zimra comes and says, right, I want my share. Zimra wants a percentage from that,
Which is a tax.
which is
They
the tax,
take the tax.
100%. So he pays the tax there. Once that's done, the gold is his. He's got his papers. He's got his export permit, which comes with this dealer's license of his. And I believe that Fidelity gives him another license to take the gold out.
Yeah, because Fidelity is the one that has
They have the
license.
license. Yes,
so
that's
the
correct.
license, they're like agents of Fidelity.
100%.
Okay, so this part or this gold value chain, as you explain it, is not really explained in the documentary. The people who made the documentary are not informed. They are not aware of this value chain and how it works and how it is very difficult to just circumvent some of these activities.
I don't know if they don't know or they deliberately held back the
That
knowledge and the
information.
information. But the documentary itself explains this. It says Zimbabwean government has no money.
Mhm.
Fidelity has no money.
Man.
Because of sanctions. That's what they say.
So the solution
Is to get buyers
with their own money,
with their own money.
they bring the money.
They buy. They go to Fidelity,
So Fidelity allows them to buy,
Yeah.
which is a license
a
again
license
to be a
again
buyer.
to be a buyer.
Fidelity allows them again to live,
It allows them to purify
to purify
Yes.
at their facility.
in their facilities.
And
Once
then
they purify, they are locked into paying tax.
they're allowed again
Then they're to leave.
to live.
But when he now leaves,
Mm.
he's been leaving money in Zimbabwe all along. You called it what? Investing.
Yes,
He's been investing.
all along
So what it means now is that it's his turn now to get his return.
in Dubai or wherever he sells.
And the
gold.
moment he leaves and goes to look for his return, it's not our gold anymore.
It's now his gold.
It's his gold.
Okay, there's a part of the documentary that says the money he's got is now in Dubai, and these guys are not bringing all the money. They bring 100,000, and then they keep the money there, but they're using the money for something. This thing, I think they did not understand how Zimbabweans operate, because even here, let's say I'm here in South Africa, someone wants to buy something here, and then he says, I will give your mother money. Can you buy for me something? And it brings convenience to me, because they actually explain that part, but they scandalized it, or they put it as if it's illegal, they're doing something crazy. But what they were explaining there is actually something that happens, that the money is in Dubai, but someone wants to buy, but they cannot buy because of maybe restrictions from Zimbabwe. Then they ask this guy, say, I'm going to give you cash here that you need to buy your gold. But the money that you have in Dubai, use it to buy what I want somewhere.
I actually think it didn't make sense.
Mhm.
Because remember, this guy who has taken the money out
Mhm.
to
He
get
still
his
ne-
4%,
Mhm.
that's his money.
Even if he keeps it there, it's not
It's
an issue.
impossible for anybody to tell that guy what to do with his money.
It's his money.
Plus, he's going to have to come back to Zimbabwe to buy more gold.
Yes.
He needs cash. So I didn't buy that part. I actually thought that that's where they were trying to make the link between how Zimbabwe is being looted by trying to suggest that,
That money
gold
taken.
leaves
Money
in
goes-
Zimbabwean gold
Okay.
and it goes out. And then when it gets there,
The money doesn't
it
come
doesn't
back.
come back. So that's how Zimbabwe is being looted. 90% of the money stays outside
Outside
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe.
That's what they were trying to say. And they tried to say it thinking that people don't know the gold chain of Zimbabwe or the value chain, where we all know that the money that these investors bring stays with the miner, stays with Fidelity, and he goes back with only gold because the value has been left
It has
behind.
been left
That's
behind.
quid pro quo.
It's business after all.
Take gold,
That's why
and
they're
leave
doing-
me the paper money I want because it can buy me machines, it can buy me tools, it can buy me fuel.
So all of this shows us the motive behind the documentary. There's a
Before
narrative.
you go to the motive, they contradicted themselves now. today in part 2, where they're now saying, no, ZMF does not want money. It asks people to invest in machinery that must be used to produce the gold.
The gold.
That now contradicts again what they said last time, because they said these people bring money, take gold and go. This time they're saying, no, ZMF, Henrietta Rishwaya wants
Machinery to produce more gold.
They had Pastor Hubert Angel talking to investors, seemingly saying to these investors, no, you need to buy machines. Or it was Dolan was actually saying that you need to buy machines. Because as you can see, he started showing them a video of what's happening in Zimbabwe. The artisanal miners don't have machinery.
Yes, they need machinery.
They need machinery. So that contradicts the notion that what these guys come and do is take Zimbabwean gold, take it on behalf of the Zimbabwean
without supporting,
and then leave 90% of it there. It's a lie. It's not backed up by their own documentary. And that lie is to create a nexus and a relationship between the Zimbabwean Reserve Bank
because
cleaning dirty money. And they are trying to create
money dirty. How does this money come from Dubai? Because if you sell there in Dubai, these buyers are licensed there in Dubai, aren't they? They are licensed there
you're asking the critical question.
Are they not licensed?
They are licensed.
They're licensed in Dubai, which makes the money that they get there legit.
Thank you.
From the source of where
does cleaning take place?
Cleaning takes.
And remember, there's two things they said in the first documentary. They say that, listen here, when they were talking to the Chinese guys, we will take you to Dubai. We'll help you to open an account in Dubai. We'll help you get a gold buying license in Dubai.
So everything is legitimate.
So then you bring your dirty money, and once we come with the gold, you are then able to buy the gold and put the money into your Dubai bank account. That person is cleaning their own money. That's what I heard from Mr. Ewan. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So the cleaning does not happen in Zimbabwe.
It's happening.
It happens in Dubai.
And
what I heard Macmillan saying to these guys, you will open your own account and get your own license. So this person literally is cleaning their own money in Dubai.
In Dubai, not in Zimbabwe.
Why is the Reserve Bank's name coming up?
Why? This is very critical information here, because the money that comes there has been certified clean elsewhere.
Zimbabwe IPND doesn't come into the equation.
It's not involved.
But they are desperate to target the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. They're desperate to target the gold of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwean gold is not cleaning money at any point. It's cleaned when this guy with the license puts the money either in Macmillan's account, who's got a clean account that has already proved that he's a gold buyer and a gold seller, that is not in dispute. Money gets cleaned right there. Money gets cleaned if this other guy from Hong Kong takes the suggestion that was being made by Macmillan that will open you a gold account, and you say you're a gold buyer, and you can put your dirty money in there and say those are proceeds from buying gold. That's cleaning at that point. Zimbabwean government is not involved.
It's not involved.
The gold of Zimbabwe is not involved. You see?
So why are they linking the Reserve Bank?
Because they want to block Zimbabwean gold, and they want to sanction the Reserve Bank.
And I was interested in the involvement of the FBI lady. Did you see that lady from FBI? Why was she there? What has a motive of being there, besides the fact that they were actually involved as FBI or maybe some other Western agents?
What's so interesting about that lady is I've met that lady in Zimbabwe. I was staying at a hotel in Zim, and she came with a friend of hers. They were sitting and talking at the swimming pool when I was sitting there. And then I could hear them talking behind me. And she was talking about being working for the FBI, and the other one was working for the CIA, and they were having a conversation behind me.
In Zimbabwe.
And I took videos of them.
I took videos of them. They were there on holiday or?
No, they work in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
She's based in Zimbabwe, that woman. She's working from Zimbabwe. And there are many agents that she manages that are in Zimbabwe. People who we see coming in as business people, when they're not business people, they're American agents, FBI agents, and CIA agents operating in our spaces. That's what I realized when I was sitting in the swimming pool.
So this documentary had all the fingerprints of Western agents.
It is
Somehow
the fingerprints of a black operation by the American government.
they are behind all this.
They are behind us.
And their aim is clear. They want to tarnish our gold industry because it's allowing us to sort of like not defeat as say, but reduce the impact of the sanctions that they impose on us. And it also allows us to oil our economy with the cash that is coming in. And if they target it, then our economy will be on the knees.
They're also targeting our investors. They're targeting Macmillan. They're targeting Rutland and his businesses. They're targeting the South African banking system. Today it was all about the South African banking system. They're showing that the South African banking system is allowing money laundering. They are proving that there are companies that exist in South Africa in which the beneficiaries are not known. And they are trying to prove that money laundering is happening through those accounts. And Rutland is undertaking money laundering through his company and through accounts and through middlemen. That's what they did today. When you now look at the holistic picture, the American government is utilizing Al Jazeera to pinpoint the South African banking system as allowing money laundering
from
at a time that they've put South Africa under
the grey
financial action.
So,
That's what they
as I say, the document actually justifies all these kind of things. It's trying to put into perspective that this is why.
But not only this is why they are then going to force the hand of the South African government and its authorities to act. And the action that they want the South African government and authorities to take is arbitrary and non-prosecutorial confiscations of property and seizures of property and blocking of accounts of the people that they're targeting. So they want Rutland's accounts to be blocked. They want Rutland's assets to be seized. They probably want Rutland's company, Goldleaf, to be targeted.
Under sanctions.
And under Financial Action Force, the task force, anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism regulations. That's why they focused on mainly Muslims and Indians as the people that are facilitating the money laundering to create a nexus between money laundering and terrorism. That's what they're subliminally doing. That's why they've got Indians only there. They're trying to suggest that there's something fishy with these terrorist-looking type of people, which is what the Americans have put in our minds, that Muslims, Indians, and people from the Middle East are terrorists. And they're trying to influence the South African government to act, the South African politicians, the South African banking system to act. And remember, to evoke money laundering restrictions or anti-money laundering blockings, it is done by banks. Banking executives have the authority to flag an account.
Yes.
Flag what are called politically exposed persons.
Yes.
And to block politically exposed persons' accounts if the funds in that politically exposed persons at any point are not legitimate or if their activities can be linked to anti-money laundering. These are the rules of Financial Action Task Force recommendation.
So if we look at this, that all these actions may be taken, or all these actions might be taken, we don't know what's going to happen. Does it impact our politics? Because I have this thing that it's an election year in Zimbabwe. It's an election year in DRC. Next year is an election year in South Africa. And all these things is coming out with a narrative that is going to link. People always blame politicians for corruption and everything. Is this not going to influence our elections? Is this not meant to create sort of like a problem for the governments that are facing elections?
Well, and remember the ANC as well has got elections
next year. Yes.
And part and parcel of blocking the economy through the Financial Action Task Force grey listing is to cripple the South African economy, to slow it down, put it in recession, so that next year people vote against the
ANC.
All right. Then with Zimbabwe, they also need to slow down the Zimbabwean economy because the Zimbabwean economy is on a boil. So they want to slow it down. And one of the ways that they want to slow it down is they need to put handbrakes on the investors that drive the Zimbabwean economy. So you saw them putting Kudata Guire's companies
Under sanctions, yes.
and associated
Under
companies
associated
under
companies, under
sanctions in
sanctions.
December.
Yes.
It was a preparation for this. They've already got Rutland under sanctions, but those sanctions are not working. In the same way that the sanctions are not working on Kudata Gure in Zimbabwe. In fact, Kuda is
So they're
actually
now doing a follow-up.
they are doing a follow-up.
To tighten their
What they
sanctions.
now want is to not only use sanctions, they now want to use anti-money laundering laws. And like I once said in a program I did with Penwell, that anti-money laundering laws were created deliberately by the G7 countries to internationalize their sanctions. So the UN is saying US sanctions are illegal. They want to now legalize US sanctions by forcing FATA to do the dirty work of the Americans by now utilizing the extra powers that FATF has to block accounts.
Okay, I'm interested in that part of grey listing and everything. We have jurisdictions like Switzerland. Are they grey listed?
Well, before you even go to say is Switzerland grey listed, just 2 months ago, Glencore was found to have been transporting cash on its private jets and bribing people.
Yes,
across the world.
Across the world, yes.
And that is money laundering, it's bribery, it's corruption.
It's not under
It
sanctions.
could be funding terrorism because the leaders who were being bribed. We don't know what they do.
We don't know what they're doing the case.
But their accounts were never blocked. Banks did not de-risk. So what that means is that the Europeans are exempt from the rules of Financial Action Task Force. Yeah. That's why when their banks collapsed in 2008, those banks that collapsed were not seen as contaminating the global system, even though they lost the globe $40 trillion.
So there are two.
The Americans were not grey listed. There are rules for Africans. There are rules for
the West.
Once you know that, and once you read the book that was written by Juan Zareta, who was the Treasury director for terrorism at Treasury when they started using sanctions as a weapon. He clearly articulates that 9/11 happened. We met 2 months after 9/11. We made regulations on money laundering and funding of terrorism. And we did it deliberately to make sure that we can cripple the enemies of the United States
with this law
to deprive them of funds. Enemies of the United States are who? Any country that poses a threat to United States economic interests, which is domination.
All right. So are we going to defeat whatever is coming?
Yes.
It's going to be defeated. Because now, these people who are bringing cash to Zimbabwe, some of them are now scared, maybe, or some of them don't want to be involved in the gold industry because of all these stories that are being spoken. Are we going to have a way of keeping the investment flowing? Are we going to have all these arrangements that we already have? Are they going to still function after this whole document that has come out?
We have been saying to Zimbabweans that our case is a critical case at international law level. It's going to affect how sanctions are implemented. It's going to affect how money laundering laws are going to be implemented going forward. Everybody in this game, the banks understand that we are about to change their ability to do what they want. The Americans know that we're about to change law on how they implement sanctions.
Yes.
And they know that, except Zimbabweans. So the Zimbabwean government hasn't been supportive. The business community that gets affected by these arbitrary laws haven't been supportive. We've even had sabotage from members of our business community who don't want sanctions to go because they're enjoying monopolies. All of them are failing to see that Zimbabwe is at the pinnacle of changing the way that sanctions are implemented in the international financial rules through this case. Because all we are saying is that do your sanctions, do your anti-money laundering, but take people to court first. Allow people to answer for themselves and defend themselves.
Not
find them guilty,
not arbitrary.
And then you can act, act within laws that have already been created. So if there's a law that says you can block their accounts, you can take them out of the banking system, that's fine. And we are now taking it a step further to say we're going to start lobbying African governments to say you now need to create laws in your countries to say banking services are a human right.
No one can implement.
No one can
rules
just block people out of
coming from the
because
United
you
States.
cannot get a job without a bank account, and you can't get a
Yeah,
salary
yeah,
without a bank
it's a
account. You
part
can't be paid as a service provider or a
Without a-
company
without a
without a
bank
bank
account.
account. That's a right. And they destroyed the Guptas by closing their bank accounts. The Guptas couldn't function; they had to leave. They tried to do it to Egbal Save and Sekunjalo, and then he went to the Equality Court. The Equality Court said you cannot block his accounts without trial. We now want to say laws have to be made to actually disempower these Western banks. These banks that we have in our continent are not ours. They're actually charter companies and charter financial companies.
And that's the reason, isn't it? That's the reason why they implement the rules of the United States.
Yes.
Because if they don't, they can still be fined there in America.
They also do it intentionally, because when you look at their shareholdings, you will see that in every single bank in South Africa, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and Fidelity, the biggest funds in the world or the biggest shadow banks in the world are the investors. Those investors within them are CIA agents in the directorships who are pushing American interests and white supremacy.
So it's a deliberate. It's already
It's
planned.
deliberate.
It's already planned.
That's
It's
why you
already
see that
part
the
of
banks
system.
in South Africa won't lend you money to start a factory, to manufacture phones, to manufacture a car. They won't give you money to start a business. They'll give you money for a car.
On that part, it now presents Zimbabwe as a different case, because this gold sector that they're targeting, the beneficiaries of the gold sector are the indigenous people, the ordinary people. You said last time there are about more than 1 million,
1.5 million.
1.5 million artisanal miners who are benefiting from the gold sector.
And among the millionaires being made
from these ordinary people.
Yeah.
And then by targeting this sector, they're disempowering these people. Because in South Africa or in other jurisdictions, money comes through banks. If you want to start a business,
yes,
you may need to get money through banks.
Yes.
And it's not easy for an ordinary person to get that money.
That's right.
You can get it for a car, you can get it for other things, but not to start a business.
Not to start a business.
So we are a case study.
We are a case study.
Empowering the ordinary black person.
And also, Zimbabwe has got another area where people are making money and creating a banking sector or collateralization of capital, where the building of houses is huge. And houses are built cash. The people who are driving that housing boom a lot of times are coming from the mining industry.
The mining industry, yes.
Once these people have houses, they've got collateral that can allow them to borrow from banks. They can create wealth.
So it's a foundation that is being built.
It's a foundation that is being built. And it's not only the banks that fund people. Individuals have enough cash in Zimbabwe to fund people. So a Radland can fund people. Kudata Gwire can fund people. And Chingimtasa can fund people. Zimbabwe is full of cash holding billionaires and millionaires
who are black
can fund black and white.
Black and white.
And this is why they're having issues with Radland, is that they're saying a white man who continues to be invested in a black country, when we left, everybody else left, why is he there?
That's why he's
Rottenbach, I don't know why they're going to target him as well, because why have you remained in this country? And those are the funders, the political parties. Those are the funders of ZANU-PF. These are the business people who are like the business people in South Africa who fund the political parties.
The political parties, yes. So that's why this whole scheme is.
So where they need ZANU-PF to fall, ZANU-PF has got campaigning money because it's got businesses that are making cash and that are flush with cash.
Yeah. Then these cash-rich guys that we have amongst us, these guys who have thrived amongst us, they are doing some work in the communities. They are supporting young people. They are supporting the vulnerable people. And in a country where there are a lot of, maybe there are poor people, and they've been relying on NGOs, Western NGOs. And now you have a black person, like Ambassador Angel, coming in and giving people food, giving the vulnerable school fees, paying school fees for a lot of people. This person becomes a target because he's taking away the interests of the West through their funding their NGOs.
And I think that's another area that many people have forgotten, that Hubert Angel is being targeted because he is exactly at the level of some of these men we've been talking about.
He's a
another
businessman.
cash flash
Businessman.
multi-millionaire with cash. And he's investing in Zimbabwe.
Because Al Jazeera itself, in the documentary, I think there's a part where they said he's worth 60 million US dollars. They put it there that he's worth 60 million US dollars.
And do you know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Cecil John Rhodes, who left his country to come to South Africa to make money.
And he became a millionaire.
Hubert Angel left his country to go to Europe
And made money.
Now, it's that bringing that money back from Europe to Africa.
That is now a problem.
That's now a problem. That's why Financial Action Task Force has to start putting brakes
on such people.
Then we've got a Radland who is similar again to Rhodes, but he's not exploiting, he's building, he's investing.
He's investing.
He's giving these uneducated miners capital. Then there's another businessman here who is creating an investment program and a competition for youth to compete for $1.5 million that they can win and start their businesses.
And these people become the targets.
They become the targets. Then you've got Kuda saying, listen here, we want people to build in their villages. You are now going to start the new businesses of Zimbabwe in your village. These guys now want to start bringing the rural community and the rural economy to life. Oh my God.
So are we now, the issue is they're still in control of the financial system. And are we going to see a change in the near future in terms of these guys, they're having their money and their businesses are being controlled by someone in America? Yet your money, you made it here in Africa, everything you did it here in Africa, they were not there. But now they can bring their rules here and impose them, and they actually work sometimes, that they can put brakes, as you're saying. Are we going to have our own way of doing this?
I think we're going to conclude on this point that, yes, we're going to have our own way. That's why these cases are important, because we make case law, we change the laws by what we do with our case here. We talk to our parliamentarians and say, change the laws in our country.
Such that banks cannot do what they want.
Number two, banks, we have to talk to our governors. We have to talk to our finance ministers. Stop signing nonsense that is not ours. So, Financial Action Task Force is not a global organization. It's not a member of the United Nations. Stop signing up to what they call their Financial Action Task Force style organizations. Stop. Because they don't apply the rules. And if you're going to be part and parcel of that, ask them to utilize the courts first to get convictions before they can start.
Let's talk about this, the gold coins.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe introduced gold coins. And why were they being a problem for the IMF? In South Africa, there are gold coins. The Krugerrands. Yes. They are there. They have been there for I don't know how long.
Yeah.
What was wrong with the Zimbabwean gold coins? Why were they being sort of discouraged?
What is so scary is that Krugerrand was started when South Africa was under sanctions as a sanctioned buster. The Rhodesia created a gold coin to be a sanctioned buster the moment they got into sanctions. Zimbabwe has done the same, and it's unacceptable for them. You see that those double standards again.
So you see the gold sector again comes in here.
But Zimbabwe is doing it at a time where it's scary. Why? Because the world is changing. It's coming from a unipolar world to a multipolar world. And now the Russians, the BRICS countries, Iran, Saudi Arabia are looking for currencies other than the US dollar to be used to pay for gold. to pay for oil.
For oil, yes.
And guess what? African countries are now coming up with the gold currency, which brings to life the gold dinar that Gaddafi wanted to introduce. And now it threatens the Europeans and the Americans, because everybody else could actually say, you know what? Instead of us creating currencies like the one to become the new reserve currency, let's create a gold currency backed up by resources. The West is going to lose that war. And all of a sudden, wealth is going to start draining out of the West back to Africa, back to Asia.
So this approach that we're taking is the right approach.
It's the right approach.
And our gold, we should keep mining our gold, supporting the gold sector. In fact, I always tell people that for the country to thrive, there should be two things: production and trade.
And capital.
So the capital is funding the production.
Yes.
And in the case of our gold production, we need someone to fund the machinery.
100%.
They produce the gold, but we don't eat gold or we don't keep gold in our silos. We have to sell it to get some money, which is the trading part.
To get machines.
And we can keep going.
100%.
So we need more miners? We need more gold buyers? We need more gold exporters.
100%. And we need gold processors.
Thank you.